Let me start, sir.
Ah,
So I begin with welcoming Dr. Vikram Raj Singh Chauhan. People already know him. He's a pretty renowned person in this field, and he's basically chief forensic scientist of Patiala Bureau of Identification. He's also president of All India Forensic Science Association and North Zone Forensic Science Association. He's the former vice president of council member Indo-Pacific Association of Law, Medicine and Science. We are really thankful to him for being here today and giving us, all the lawyers and everyone, an insight into forensic science. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. And I also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Narendra for having taken this initiative to help us getting Dr. Chauhan over here. So welcome, sir. And it is all to you now. You can please begin, sir.
it's also my pleasure to be here with all of you.
Thank you, sir. So you can begin, sir.
Okay. First of all, I'm sharing. The slides are visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. The today topic which was given to me is regarding the overview of forensic science and the crime scene investigation. And it is a very interesting topic in the sense that it helps in locating the physical evidence and to connect the crime with the criminals. So first of all, I will like to elaborate the word forensic, in which there is a meaning is forum. Forum is a collection of all the forensic science. It is the application of all the branches of science. Which can you think, whether it is science or arts, commerce, medical engineering, anything. These are all for the purpose of justice, and it links the crime with the criminal and with the aid of physical evidences, which we'll be discussing in this topic, different branches of science and the physical evidences which are found at the crime scene and provide justice to the innocents. So in the roots of the forensic science dates ages back. The word forensic and its technique have been helping crime and justice for years. In Arth Shastras also, the Chanakya describes that the scientific reason behind that should be proved. In olden times, an accused would be given some rice balls, that is chawal ka gola, to keep in the mouth, and immediately he had to vomit it out. If there was less saliva on the rice ball, it was believed that he or she was an accused, as fear causes less saliva production, and based upon the analysis of the saliva, the accused was punished. Because it was in ancient time, the forensic science was there. But there was no progress in the forensic science during the British rule. Though they brought forensic labs some 150 years ago, with the progress in science and technology, and with the increase in population, and with the new ways of crime, the forensics have gained importance. Now, there was a time when the witness defined the case status. The whole theory of the case was dependent upon him. However, a few years later, the witness would change his or her statement to the advantage of the accused. He became hostile. So, hence, the forensic reports are more credible if the forensic evidence, that is the physical evidence found at the crime scene, is properly analyzed and sent to the lab as compared to the witness statements. So, in my next slide, it is relating to the forensic biology and serology. These kind of evidences which we collect at the crime scene involving forensic biology and serology, these include the blood stains, normal, semen, urine, saliva, milk, perspirations, vaginal swabs or secretions, sputum, vomit, hair, fibers, leaves, wood, etc. These kind of physical evidences which involve forensic biology and serology. Now, the biological evidences which are related to human body is referred to as forensic evidence. And to prove the fact of the case, its biological composition and properties are to be seen. The evidence often require the inspection and identification to find them with the facts of the case. Now I'm going to share a case with you regarding which the blood stain which helped to solve the murder mystery. It was a murder of Naba businessman named Bantram Goel, which was solved by our Patiala Bureau of Identification. The brief history of the case was that the businessman had come to the house of one Mashur Singh and demanded 143 lakhs on the basis of blank note signed by him earlier. But actually, he had taken the 36,000. So, on this illegal demand by the businessman, there was an altercation, and the Mashur Singh hit Bantram on the head with a sharp weapon attached to a stick. So following this, the Mashur Singh told his son Ramandeep to get a piece of paper and directed Bantram businessman to give a receipt of rupees 1.43 lakhs. So, but during the writing of the receipt, the Bantram blood drops fell on the paper, and later Mashur Singh killed businessman after taking the receipt of 1.43 lakhs. Now the Mashur Singh and his son put the body of the businessman in a gunny bag and threw it in an abandoned place. It was a Sarancho. When businessman could not reach home for several days, the matter was reported to the police with the information that the Bantram had gone to the house of Mashur Singh just to collect the money which he had taken on loan, and but he never returned. So police reached the house of the Mashur Singh to investigate the matter. And Mashur Singh admitted the fact that Bantram had visited his house and he had given him entire money, that is for 1.43 lakhs, which he owed. And in turn, Bantram had issued him a receipt of the entire amount, and he showed that receipt to the police. So the matter was reverted to our bureau regarding the examination of handwriting on the receipt, whether it matches with the standard writing of Bantram or not. But during examination of the receipt, under high magnification, some blood-like stains were found on the receipt. And we taken the photographs, and then for analysis, we had sent this receipt to the IO for further investigations. And when confronted with this scientific evidence, the Mashur Singh confessed to having committed the murder of Bantram businessman along with his son. So later, the police recovered the mutilated body according to the saying of the businessman from the abandoned place, and sent to the forensic lab for further investigations. So the blood collected on the receipt and the blood of the victim was matched with that of the victim. So if there were no blood stain, then the case could not have been solved, and Mashur Singh might have gone scot-free as the police could not make any headway. So if the blood was not there, so this case could not have been solved. In another case, also which is relating to this biology and serology, a sale girl approached some person X for selling some articles, and she was raped in the house of X when the victim and the rapist were the only persons present in the house at that time. The victim pulled the hair of the rapist and had bitten him also. So the piece of evidence of bite marks as well as the presence of pulled hair in her hands was significant evidence that the hair was pulled and proved on the basis of hair roots, and were proved to be that of the rapist on the morphological characteristics apart from the other evidences. So here the physical evidences played an important role. Now, now here as a trace evidence show many medico legal importance questions. First of all, if a hair is found, alleged to be hair found at the crime scene, and first of all, we have to see whether it is a hair or some other fiber. So we have to distinguish it. For that, the examination of hair is necessary, and because the composition of hair, it includes cuticle, cortex, and medulla. It is part of the hair. And then we have to distinguish it from the human and the animal also. And third step is whether it is of male or female, and again from which part of the body, then age of the person, and the identical with that of the victim or not. Because if it is of some other person, then you have to note down the suspected person, more than one suspected person, and then we have to see whether it is naturally removed or it is forcibly removed. They have to be seen, because if it is forcibly removed, then you will have the roots of the hair along with the hair, part of the hair. Now again, the detection of poison is also analyzed from the hair, okay, whether the person was poisoned or not. And in most of the cases, the sexual offenses, hair plays an important role. So it is the hair is a small kind of thing which has to be located by the IO at the crime scene. Now, the another branch is the forensic toxicology, which deals with poison, drugs, and also the mercury, arsenic elements, metals, lead, and snake venom, opium, heroin, alcohol, petrol, etc. These kind of things we will see in the toxicology part. And you have also learned that the Napoleon Bonaparte was a French military general who was then believed to have died a natural death. But the recent evidences have come to light suggesting that he had a slow death due to the arsenic poisoning. The hair sample of the Napoleon, which was collected from his head probably one day after his death and preserved in the French Army Museum, it was sent to the Department of Forensic Medicine at the University of Glasgow, Scotland, where it was examined under neutron activation analysis. It is a kind of instrument to judge the poison in the hair samples. And we have come with the astonishing results in which the hair of the Napoleon was carrying 10.38 parts per million, which is a very high quantity as compared to the normal mean arsenic content of the about 0.8 parts. So by this way, we can say that the if the examination of the hair is done properly, then a case can be solved regarding whether it contained poison or not. Now, in another case, it is also an interesting case in which a clever person poured some kerosene oil over the dead body of his wife, whom he had killed, and set it on fire. He opened the valve of the gas cylinder to create a explosion-like situation, just dummy. So later he left the house in order to prove his absence in the house at the time of the explosion and misled the IO. So on investigation, the smoke on the roof of the kitchen, when analyzed, it was found that kerosene deposit was there. The kerosene oil was also detected in the burned clothes of the victim. So no defect was found in the valve of the gas cylinder as stated by his husband. Doctor gave opinion regarding the post-mortem burns, and these burns and also indicated the absence of carbon monoxide in the blood of the deceased, and showing signs of gas explosion were absent. So it was a clear case of murder by the husband, and who was held responsible for killing his wife and was punished. Some other circumstantial evidences were also there to prosecute him. So in this way, the this kind of things like drugs, poison, smokes, and alcohol, petrol, kerosene, they help in detection of the crime and to link with the criminal. Now, the toxicologist's duty is to identify and analyze the poison, drugs, and chemical when sent to the forensic lab. He has also to see the effects of the such substances on the body, and it is important in helping the medical examiner to determine the cause of death in an autopsy. So all the blood and the tissue sample undergo a toxicological screening. So these kind of things are to be established at the forensic lab in the forensic toxicology department. Now, another branch, it is also an interesting branch of forensic science, is a forensic ballistics. It all deals with the analysis, identification, and detection of the firearms, cartridge cases, bullets, pellets, wads, gunpowder, range of fire, and injuries. So, if at the crime scene these kind of evidences are present, then it can be linked with the criminal. So, at the crime scene, when the firearm was recovered to check whether it is of original make or country made. So usually we find country-made weapons at the crime scene and not the original one in number of cases. And sometimes we find only cartridges cases or bullets, and from which we can determine the from which firearm, whether a 12 bore or a .22 or it is a .32 revolver, .32 pistol. So, and in for direction of shooting, from which direction the shot has been made, we have to find out. In case of a 12 bore cartridge, we have to see the position of the wads. So it is a composition of the 12 bore cartridge, which includes primer, wad, and the lead bullets. And when the primer was ignited, then strike with the strike of the hammer, then it detonates and it throws all the matter in it, including the lead bullets, wads, and the primer. So it just fell. The wad just fell about 5 meters ahead from the shooting range. So it can be said that in from which direction the fire was done. Then further, if direction was made available, then we can see the other evidences in nearby location of the criminal, and like shoe prints, footprints, or any other hair samples. It is a connective piece of evidence we can have. So another, if there is no weapon or no cartridge case, no bullet is available at the crime scene, then we have to see the injury marks on the body of the victim. And we have to see the entry and the exit wounds on the body of the victim, and from which we can determine the type of firearm used in the crime. And its caliber can also be ascertained. So another thing is we have to see whether the firing is close range or long range firing. So for that, in close range firing, that is point blank range, we see the burning, blackening, and tattooing effects on the wound, and which shows that it was fired from the close range. But in the long range firing, these kind of burning, blackening, and tattooing effects are absent. But and I will tell you one of the case in which a ASI was murdered by some unknown culprit, and he was hit by a projectile in the back of the neck. So there was no visible exit wound. So it was thought that the projectile must be lodged inside the body along with the bones or the bone marrow. Thorough X-ray screening did not give any lead. So everyone was surprised where the bullet has gone. So on probing, it was discovered that track led to the mouth. From the back side, a track led to the mouth, and the absence of projectile could now be understood that it has just escaped through the mouth. So these kind of things, very interesting to know, to find out the bullet. And then after that, at the crime scene, the bullet was available. Major types of ballistic evidences, which include the bullet holes on the window panes of the car. We have to see the entry and the exit wounds, and we have to see the damage which has been done to the vehicle or to the person, the direction from which the bullet was fired, and we have to see whether it was one weapon, two weapon, or three weapon. So all these things have to be determined in the ballistic evidence. And the gunshot wounds are also important, and the injury marks, from whether they are anti-mortem, post-mortem. These kind of things we have to see in this ballistics branch. Now another branch is the forensic medicine branch. It is related to the doctors and dealing with the medico-legal aspect of the death investigation. When the body is sent to the postmortem examination at the hospital, then they have to ascertain what is the cause of the death, whether it is accidental, it is homicidal, suicidal, or natural. So we have to these have to be identified by examining the whole body of the victim. Now we have to also to see whether the injuries were self-inflicted, homicidal, accidental, or they are natural. So we have to distinguish all these injuries very briefly. And the type of weapon used is also determined, whether sharp weapon used, blunt weapon used, and a bullet we have already discussed. So and in the doctor's cabin, who is doing the postmortem examination, he has to depose in the court of law also, because after conducting postmortem examination he has to depose, and the cause of death is told by the doctors by now. So he has to first distinguish between the ante-mortem and post-mortem wounds. So I will tell you just a few example of wounds which inflame and heal only in living tissues, while in the dead tissue they putrefy. The skin loses its elasticity after the death. Therefore, the changes associated with the elasticity of the skin do not take place when the wound is inflicted on the dead body. And the post-mortem wound do not bleed profusely, but ante-mortem wound does. The edges of the wound are deeply and firmly soaked in ante-mortem injuries. Bruises cannot be caused on the dead body after a few hours of death. So all these observations have to be noted down by the doctors and while giving the report. So in one suspected case of drowning, the body of person was recovered from the Bhakra Canal and was sent for the post-mortem examination. So the doctors observed injuries on the body. Now the question first arises whether these injuries are ante-mortem or post-mortem, and whether the case is of suicide or homicide. So on examination of the wound, it was observed that the edges of the wound were deep and firmly soaked, showing ante-mortem injury. And the absence of the diatom, which is a kind of the alga in the lungs, confirmed the case as a homicide. Because if it was a case of drowning, then the diatom must be in the lungs inside, and not in the absence was not there. So from this diatom only the cause of the death and was ascertained whether it was suicidal or it was homicidal. So it was declared as a homicidal. So somebody killed that person and throw the body into the Bhakra Canal. Now the criminalistics, these kind of branch, it includes the type of the crime which is committed by the criminals, whether it is theft, it is a murder, rape, or kind of crime. And from the type of the crime, we have to see the modus operandi of the criminal. So, in the manner in which he is doing the crime, that is, when the murder coupled with rape. So, and at the abundant places, highway, he is always choosing the highways for the theft of the vehicles. So, it is the modus operandi of the criminal. So, this branch deals with that aspect. Thirdly, it was the study of the criminal behavior. So whether the person is normal, is a lunatic, or some psychic problem was there. So these kind of behavior are also to be seen while investigating the case. Now, another branch which is a forensic anthropology, which deals with the identification through stretchers, reconstruction and measurement of bones, etc., and for the estimation of heights, age, and sex. The biometric statistical analysis of these biological characteristics was done in case of some disaster, mass disaster is there, and we are, our bomb blast is there. Then we have to study the bones for the for identifying the person. So this branch, it is the skeleton, the study of the skeleton remains found at the crime scene. Now to help, which help to determine the identity and the cause of the death of the victim. Now again, I am sharing a case of identification through these features, the skeleton remains. A boy who was off from uh, Ludhiana, he was saying that he was killed by his uncle in his previous birth. In his previous birth. So it is interesting to know. It is without the scientific evidence he was saying, but he keep on saying that uncle has killed me and buried him at that place in Saharanpur, and he has shown the location, and he has told the address of the his previous parents. So when the team, police team, then went to that site, the excavation was done and a skeleton was found. So everybody surprised this. Okay, how a boy can know? Because when the excavation was done, there was lot of plantation there. We have to very uh, dig. We have to very dig the things very hard, and we are able to locate the skeleton. And from there, the skull of the skeleton was compared with that of the photograph of the boy by superimposition techniques, and it was found that this skull belongs to that person who was missing many years ago. Now, it was also a question of law, whether a person who is alive now, he is telling regarding the his previous birth murder. So, but at the same time, there is no provision in the law. But on the circumstantial evidences, the uh, the boy was the the evidence of the boy was considered, and his uncle was prosecuted. So another we're talking about the question document examination. Now in this branch, which is a very common branch, and it is dealing with the handwriting, signatures, typewritings, anonymous or threatening letters, secret writings, etc. So it is a broad aspect, because there are some minute things are also to be seen by the question document examiner. So I will just tell you the what type of investigation which are we are going in this branch. The problem faced by the investigators are usually the identification of the signatures and the writings, thumb impression, and typewritings on the documents. The identification of the type of forgery is also done. So it is whether it is a trace forgery, it is a copied forgery, and why it is a by impersonation, why it is a memory. So type of forgery has to be identified. But and in some cases, identification of writing material is also be seen by the document examiner, and it has to be seen whether it has made with the same writing material or some addition has been made, and some alteration in the document is also been seen. So for these kind of alteration, additions, and are to be examined under high magnification microscopes and also under UV light. And in some cases there are erasing in the documents, some secret or intended writings are written, some anonymous writings are written. So these are to be seen with different kind of instruments in the lab. Now the most common the things which we are going to examine are the sequence of strokes, that which stroke has been made first. Now, usually we see that a thumb impression was on a blank paper and the writing was made or typewriting was made over it, and make to make the document genuine, because the signature or thumb impression was genuine. But on examination of the intersecting part of the writings or the typed matter over the thumb impression, uh, through the stereo microscope, we can see the three-dimensional image, and we were able to say whether it is a beneath the thumb impression is beneath the writing or it is above the writing. So if it is above the writings, then it is a certain that first the thing is written and the thumb mark or the signature was made later on. But if it is beneath the writings, then we can definitely say that the writing, the document was blank, containing only the thumb impression and the signature, and the writing was made later on. So, and another point of view is the identification of forger, which is very difficult to ascertain. who has forged these documents. But in some cases, when we got the suspects and we have taken the writings of the suspects, we can able to be identify the forger. So because every person has unique habit of writing and individual writing characteristics, which from which his identity is established. So to some extent, we can find out the identification of the forger. Now, again, the important aspect is the age of the document, which is very difficult to ascertain the age of the document. But again, it is dependent upon the circumstantial type of the paper, watermarks in it, the examination of ink. So we can not say directly that the document is 5 years old, 10 years old, or 20 years old. So it is the difficulty which is going to be faced. But now we are working on some recent technology to ascertaining the age of the document. Now, in one of the case, we have ascertained the age of the document by considering the signatures of the previous period and middle period and the later period. So we cannot detect the exact time, but we have shown that this signature must have been in the period from 1980 to 1985. It was just estimated, but the signature was used in the 2012 document. So it could help the document expert to form an opinion. Now, uh, there is also a problem in identifying the original and the counterfeit currencies. Now, there is a fake currencies are available, but in the during the examination of these currency notes in the lab, we can see that here, which is the original 100 rupee note, is showing the watermark, very prominent watermark. While in the counterfeit currency, this is showing very less, only just marginal marking are there. Sharpness is there in the original, not in this. This this fake line is made. This, but here it is the original, including RB is written. And in this photograph, it's showing the sequence of stroke, that the intersecting points, these are the intersecting points. One is above that stroke and this is beneath that stroke. So under stereo microscope, uh, we can say which stroke is beneath. And the maximum cases with regard to the date are that the addition. Now this is going to be a 2020 year. Now the maximum position of saying that people are making the document by adding 119 when we have written only 20. So we have to make document by writing 2020 again, because it may be of 217, it may be 216, 200, 2016. So these kind of the things we have to be considered while appending in document. Now again, I will show you the symptoms of forgery. What kind of forgeries are there? Uh, so I'm showing this slide regarding the forgery, which is a copied forgery, a crude kind of copied forgery. So here the name written is J Singh, that is Jagjit Singh. So you can see lot of tremors are there, lot of hesitations are there. At the base of the letter J, there is an unnecessary pen lift and the careful joining is there. So at the connections also, there are unnecessary touchings and pen lifts, again careful joinings, and the strokes are totally blunt, beginning as well as the ending. Even the embellishment below the signature has been written very hesitant. So this signature only includes all the symptoms of forgery. So that is why I'm saying the forger could not see the signature. He just tried to copy the signature and made it just. So it is a crude kind of forgery. So again, I will share one another case of handwriting in which we'll see the rebirth of a child is there again. First of all, in the anthropology department, we have seen the from the skull, we have determined the skeleton remains, the identity of the person. Now it was another interesting case, which was it was a case of a 6-year-old boy named Taranjit, who was of the Aluna Miana village near Payal, Ludhiana. So he claimed to remember his previous life. Again, that rebirth stories kind of things. So now the question is, can the science uphold the belief in the rebirth? So in my opinion, it was no. And but due to my curiosity, I just wanted to investigate this case, because the parents of that boy who was claiming to be born a new life were very weak, and the boy even used to attempt to run away from home several times, according to his parents, because the boy was saying, "You are not my parents. My parents are at some other village in Jalandhar district, and I'm going there. I'm going there." So the previous, now the present parents, they were very worried about the things. So they have gone to the psychiatrist to see what has happened to this boy. The psychiatrist told them that just note down everything, but whatever the boy says. So they have noted down many things, in which the boy was studying in ninth class, and he was in a Nihal Wal village, and at the time of the death, and when he was returning home on a bicycle from his school, along with his friend, a scooter rider named Joga Singh hit him, and he received injuries on his head and died the following day. Now, to inquire this matter, the parents of that boy also went to the school in Nihalwal village in the Jalandhar district and met an old teacher who told that it was true that a boy named Satnam had died in an accident, and he was the son of the Jeet Singh of Chakchela village. So the family reached the house of the Jeet Singh to further inquire the matter and narrated the whole story. The boys also claimed that his bag and books had been soaked in blood, and he had rupees 30 in his purse when the accident occurred. So on hearing this, the previous birth mother started weeping and confirmed his claim that she had preserved the blood-stained book and rupees 30, the last memory of her child. So on visiting his previous birth parents, the boy recognized his parents, relatives who were very rich. Now, main question arises that whether his present parent, who are economically very weak, want to adjust their child in the rich family. It was the first question. Now, in the first instance, I refused to believe this story, but due to curiosity, I, along with my team, decided to investigate this case. We asked the boy, when he remembers so much things of the past, like his class, his classmates, his school, his parents, his relatives, then he must have remembered how to write the things, because it was a surprise thing for that 6-year-old, and he had not gone to school. He couldn't even had pen in his hand, according to his parents. So, but the boy replied in affirmative and said, "Yes, I can write in Punjabi and English." So we took sample of his handwriting and got compared with the writings in the copybooks, which were preserved by her previous mother. So the after examining this handwriting, it was very surprising for us that the strokes of writings were matching. Because according to forensic science, a person's handwriting has some individual writing characteristics which cannot be matching with other person's handwriting, even if he attempted a number of times. Because handwriting is a applied science consisting of optics, the science of sight; physiology, the science of physique; the psychology, the science of mind. And the combination of all these sciences is the handwriting. The mind plays an important role in shaping person's handwriting, and the hand only translates into action the dictates of the mind, which cannot be same in two different writers. So I was very amazed to see that the handwriting of the present boy Taranjit matches with the handwriting of the Satnam Singh, except some variation. No, some variations are also there in their muscular coordination, as the Taranjit Singh was not accustomed to write, nor he went to any school. So Now, if it is presumed that soul is transferred from one person to another, then it can be inferred that the mind will be the same. Now, if the Satnam Singh soul was believed to have been transferred into the Taranjit Singh body, then it stood to reason that the handwriting of Taranjit Singh would correspond with that of the Satnam Singh. Now it's up to the person, up to you whether to believe it or not. But the handwriting has been confirmed, and the person was also confirmed, because they all are, one was from the previous work, one is present is same. And now I am also visiting for taking more specimen writings of that boy for further research. Now, this research was also going on in America also. We have a collaboration with the American agencies in which they were considering the rebirth cases, and which are mostly accidental, and they are seeing the accidental things or injuries on the body of the newly born boy also, or girl also. So when we discuss the matter, they have said that we are seeing that in the rebirth cases, the wounds and the injuries are at the same place. So when I considered my handwriting point of view, then they are going to further investigate the matter with the blood soaked books which I have collected from the house of that previous mother. Then we are, but it was difficult to locate the blood from that book, because it was very old and was exposed. So it was not possible to collect DNA from that sample. Now, another important branch is the fingerprints and the footprints. So, in every crime scene, whichever you can think, fingerprints and footprints, or both of them, or one of them must be there. So, our first aim is to identify, classify, and detection of fingerprints and footprints at the crime scene. So, first of all, when we don't have the knowledge of fingerprints and footprints, we can't do anything at the crime scene. So it is the same case with the IOs, because they don't know how to take the fingerprints from the crime scene. They don't use gloves even. In my next slide, I'm just showing small things regarding the uh, fingerprints. Now we are in the world of fingerprints, which are generally of four types. One is arch type pattern. Here it is like a arch. When the ridges enter from one side, make a small tent like appearance in the middle and return to the another side. So this kind of pattern is called arch pattern. It is plain, or it is a tented arch also. But and another pattern is a loop type pattern, in which the ridges enter from this side, left side or right side, and make a curve and return to the left side. So it is having a core point and a delta point also for further identification, apart from the minute characteristics. And the third one is the whorl type pattern. It is a circular or almond shape form. So here the presence of two deltas are there. Point of core is there in the center. And the fourth one is the composite, which means combination of two patterns. So these composite patterns are center pocket loop, lateral pocket loop, composites, or twin loop. So these are more than one pattern, then we can say it is a composite type pattern. So here now you can see a finger with having a raised portion showing ridges. Here it is the print of that only. Ridges, here are the original ridges, also containing pores in between them, and you can see here bifurcation is there, and here ridge ending is there. So these, when imprinted with the stamp pad, they show such kind of pattern, so which are to be identified. Now for the comparison point of view, we take a suspected or a questioned thumb impression, and another is a standard thumb impression. Now we compare these thumb impression with regard to the pattern type, then according to the delta, then core point, then the minimum 8 point of ridge characteristics must be present to opine that these fingerprints are of one and the same person. So this is the briefing, just brief regarding the fingerprint examination. Now another is the voice analysis. Now today we are getting anonymous calls, some bomb box calls, kidnapping, extortion calls. So these are mostly in the tape telephones, or somebody with the use of software, they can also change their voice. So it is a very difficult for the expert to examine the voice of the person, but with some spectrographic analysis, voice spectrographic analysis, we can have the voice can be matched. We can see the question voice on the left hand side and the controlled voice under the same condition. Because if you have received the call in a through telephone or through mobile, then the controlled voice of the suspected person must be through mobile or the telephone. So when you have the control sample, then you can identify whether it belongs to one person or not. Now, my next topic is regarding the forensic DNA. It is a very major branch in which we have to study and identify the DNA profile of a person from the nucleus of cell, tissue or organ of the individual, and which form our genes or genetic code from which all the characteristics are derived, and it is unique and solves paternity and maternity dispute. Mostly in the court of law, such kind of cases are there. So in order to know regarding the DNA, first of all, its full form is the deoxyribonucleic acid, and it is the basic genetic material in all the living cells of the body, whether it is a blood, it is a semen, it is a hair, bone, marrow, body tissue, saliva, etc. Anything which is a living cell in your body contain DNA. Now it is present in white blood corpuscle, WBC, and not in the red blood corpuscles. So you can see it has a double helix model like this. So, and having the four bases, adenine, thymine form one pair, and cytosine and guanine form another pair, which varies from individual to individual, which will help to identify the person. Now, in famous Nana Sani's Tandoor murder case, the DNA was detected from the chaired body of the victim. So, which was compared with her parents and was identity was established. So, in DNA profiling is useful in case of gang rape cases in locating the different source of identification of skeleton remains also. But if even a small microgram kind of thing, blood is present at the crime scene, with the help of the PCR technology, which is polymerase chain reaction technology, we can identify the DNA to which person it belongs and to link the crime with the criminal. Now, it is mandatory to collect in any case involving sexual assault, but it does not mean that the rule is followed all the time. The collection of DNA evidence is particularly poor in the rural areas as compared to the urban areas. So there is a need for the standard operating protocol for the collection of the DNA evidence. Only few victims of the assault, sexual assault, realizes the value of the protecting evidences like clothes and body fluids, etc. 85% of the rape cases ended up in acquittal of the accused just due to the shoddy investigating techniques and lack of clinching evidence, include the DNA evidence. In Nirbhaya rape case also, the investigating agencies spent a lot of money just to get dental matches of the accused with the help of the UK agency. So we are not having proper infrastructure to analyze these kind of things, but we are maintaining, we are still progressing. Now, if DNA evidences matches that with the accused in the crime, then there is an airtight case, even if the victim turns hostile. So, in famous the Delhi High Court had asked Hyderabad-based Center for DNA, Fingerprinting and Diagnostic to conduct DNA test on the veteran Congress leader N.T. Tiwari to ascertain the plea of the Rohit Shekhar claiming to be his biological son. And this was established by the DNA test. Now, only through DNA, the identification of the person is established. And now another branch is like the polygraph or lie detection. It is not very prevalent because it is not successful, because if a hardcore criminal is there, then he can control all the things, like he can control the blood pressure, pulse rate, respiration, muscle movement. And in this test, the clinical psychologist prepares a set of questions depending upon the crime scene also, and which is provided by the facts of the case was provided by the IO to the psychologist, and he just prepare the questionnaires, and the subject is questioned and the reactions are measured. Now, if a hardcore criminal is there, he look like a normal, and his all blood pressure, pulse rate will be the normal. Now, deviation from the baseline is taken as a sign of lie, but is not successful. But in another thing is narco analysis. It is also derived from narco word, Greek word, which means anesthesia, and was coined by the Horsley. Now, in this test, the subject's imagination is neutralized by making him semi-conscious. Now, in this condition, it becomes very difficult for the subject to lie, and his answers are restricted to the facts or crime of which he or she is aware. But again, this is not very successful, because in narco analysis, the experts inject the subject with some sodium pentothal or sodium amytal dissolved in distilled water under controlled circumstances of the lab. Now, the dose is dependent upon person's sex, age, health, and physical condition. These all conditions have to be seen before injecting the subject with these sodium pentothal. Now, the wrong dose can send the subject into the coma or even result in death. So, the drug just depresses the nervous system of the victim. It lowers the blood pressure and slows the heart rate, putting the subject in a hypotonic state. And now the subject is interrogated by investigating agencies in the presence of doctors, and the revelation made during these days are recorded both in the video and the audio cassettes. So to be represent in the court of law. No, but this procedure is conducted in the government hospitals only, and after obtaining the court order. Personal consent of the subject is also required. So it is very difficult to go with narco analysis in every case. Now, the various cases relating to famous cases relating to the narco analysis are the infamous fake stamp paper case. Abdul Karim Telgi was subjected to narco analysis, and the Bombay High Court in 2004 held that the subjecting an accused to narco analysis does not violate fundamental right against self-incrimination of the Indian Constitution. In Noida serial murder case also, you have heard of regarding the Mohinder Singh Pandey and his servant Surinder Kohli, which was conducted in 2007. Test was conducted in 2007, and who were the accused of serial killing of women and children in Nithari village. And the Abu Salim, one of the accused in Mumbai blast, was also subjected to the narco analysis. And recently, the Arushi murder case, the Talwar parents were subjected to the narco analysis, but nothing fruitful came out. No, this is very important, brain mapping test. After lie detecting, then narco analysis, now brain mapping test, that is P300 is there. This test was developed and patented in 1995, neurologist Dr. Lawrence F. Fairwell. Now, in this test, the accused is first interviewed, interrogated to find out whether he is concealing any information relating to crime. Then, sensors are attached to subject's head, and the person is seated before a computer monitor, and he is then shown certain images or made to hear certain sounds. And after that, the sensor monitor electric activity brain and the register 300 electric waves, which are generated only if the subject has connection with the stimulus, that is picture or sound. Now, in this test, subject is not asked any questions. Brain mapping machines information stored in the brain with the information from the crime scene only. So it is one of the fruitful case which is going to be adopted. Now another branch is important branch is the cyber forensics, in which no person has been left who has not faced the cyber crime. In every email we are getting, you have won so much lottery, you have won a lottery of so many things, and you may have received a mail regarding some threats or to your computer, or your money has been detected from your bank. So all these things are very common, and so we in this branch we have to, it is the acquisition, authentication, analysis and documentation of the evidences extracted from and contained in the computer system also, because in today's time we are getting used to computer in every day of life, whether it is mobile, whether it is a laptop, whether it is a desktop, anything. Now it deals with the analysis of crime relating to computer networking, such as hacking of websites or the facilitation of pornography and internet frauds. So finding a decrypting password, protecting information, and tracking the source of the email are also important in this branch. Now, tracking software piracy and recovering deleted data and providing digital evidence for the presentation is important in this branch. And in one of the case, an email was received by the head of the Department of Examination of All India Institute of Medical Sciences from the CBI. The email said that the CBI has received source information that some corrupt officials of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences had leaked the postgraduate entrance examination paper. Now, further, it contained a request to the HOD to send the original question paper for the purpose of examination. Now, when the matter was inquired from the CBI telephonically, it was understood that the CBI had not yet taken any such case for verification or identification. A final examination of the email sender's address confirmed that it had not been originated from the CBI's mail server. CBI then registered a case and started investigating the case, and subsequently traced the physical location of the computer from which the mail was originated. It was found to be a cyber cafe in city of Punjab. The computer was seized and forensically analyzed, and it was found to be formatted. But still, the experts were able to retrieve the image of the email, its time and date of creation. And later, on integration, the owner of the cyber cafe showed the log of the users who was hiding the log, and the person was detected and he was then prosecuted. So it is very important branch of cyber forensics. Now, forensic science provides answer to the following queries. Now, first, whether the crime has been committed. It is the first question. If crime is not, then there is no purpose of any further investigation. And now, how and when was the crime committed? That was the point. So, if the crime was committed in fields and body was found somewhere else, we have to see all the physical evidences depending upon both the sides. And after that, we have to see who has committed the crime and when it was committed, the time of commission of the crime. And the person who has committed the crime must have left some physical evidences which we have to examine. Now, basic principle of forensic science on which the investigation depends are the law of individuality. Everything in this world are unique. No two things are similar. So, based on this law of individuality, even fingerprints are unique. So footprints are unique, hair is unique, DNA is unique. So on the basis of this principle, law of individuality, it depends. Another is the law of exchange, principle of exchange. When two things are in contact with each other, there is an exchange of material between them. And in case of accidents, in collision of the two cars, the paint of one car is get adhered to the another car, and the of another car to this previous one. So exchange of printed matter paints is also there. And another law, which is the progressive change, law of progressive change. Everything is in this world is going to change. Uh, everything is progressing, and everything is having a progressive change, whether it is a nature, whether it is a situation, whether it is a person. So at the crime scene, if it is not investigated at a proper time, then the change will be there, the things will be not be there, the physical evidences will not be located properly. So we have to consider this law, that whenever a crime happens, we have to reach the crime scene immediately. Another thing is the law of comparison. Only likes can be compared with likes. Now, sending the if the at the crime scene a bullet, a .22 bullet revolver was recovered, and sending a bullet of the another caliber to the lab for inspection is of no use. Similarly, if a person is making an initial in the signature and no word in it, and we are sending the writing for comparison, it will be no. So the only likes can be compared with the likes is the basic principle of science. Now, various tools and techniques with which we identify all kind of physical evidences in the forensic labs include the comparison microscopes, stereo microscopes, photographic equipments, chromatographic techniques, electrophoresis, spectrography, mass spectrography, spectrophotometry, neutron activation analysis, X-ray diffraction analysis, differential thermal analysis, and nuclear magnetic resonance scanning electron microscope. All these kind of tools and techniques are available in the forensics lab, but they will be only helpful if a proper physical evidence is collected at the crime scene and sent to the lab for investigation and analysis. Now, at the crime scene investigation, the first person to reach is the IO, the investigating officer. Now he must be trained to, first of all, if a murder has happened, first of all, he has to see, protect the crime scene. So nobody should enter that crime scene. He should protect it. And so first of all, he has to send the body for post-mortem examination. And he has to call to the forensic team for the collection of the evidences at the crime scene. And the forensic team will search the uh, uh, crime scene, and biology team will search for blood samples here, ballistics team will search for bullets, etc. So there is a team of forensics team which according to their specialization, they will search for the physical evidences. Now after that, it is the collection of the evidence which is important. So at the collection of how they are to be collected, blood sample, how they are to be collected here, how they are to be collected, in which things they have to be sealed. So these are to be questions which are to be asked during the cross examination of the IO. So after that, the preservation of the crime scene is made, close-up photography, long range photography, and making of sketches there. So all kind of physical evidences photographed and then preserved and then sent to the forensic lab for this. IOs are to be trained. He has to be a photographer. He has to be a quick analyst of the things to be found at the crime scene. He might be not be knowing the physical evidences must be present at the scene, but he must be overlooking that thing. So he has to be aware about the physical evidences. Now that will help with the help of the forensic scientists at the crime scene. It will be helpful for them to collect the evidences and send to the labs. Now comes the part of the lab. Now forensics lab will only analyze the physical evidences which are sent to them by the IO. And only if the forensic evidence is not suitable or it cannot be ascertained or analyzed, then there is no use of the forensic labs. And in tools and techniques, heavy machineries is there. So the basic thing now comes at the instance of the IO who collect the physical evidences from the crime scene. Now, the physical evidences which are found at the crime scenes only can connect the crime with the criminals or the suspected persons. And with this kind of physical evidences, a report was made and it was presented in the court of law. Now here judicial court, the analysis of physical evidences and the expert reports, after the submission of the report, the expert has to depose in the court of law. Now the expert who first analyzed the physical evidences has to depose in the court. But if the other person who has not analyzed the physical evidences and is deposing in the court of law, he will destroy the whole case. So on the basis of the expert evidences, the court make judgments and the criminals are prosecuted and acquitted. So my humble submission to all the IOs or the investigating officer and scientist is to first to analyze, first to locate the things, crime scene, and to protect the crime scene, and then to collect the evidences properly and send to the labs for identification, and only then the case can be solved, because otherwise the criminals will be got scot free. Thank you from my side, gentlemen. Any queries, any questions regarding?
Thank you, Dr. Saab. It was really a wonderful session and pretty interesting as well. And there are, I suppose, sir, can you just end the screen so that we can have all of them? Yes. So I suppose there'll be a lot of questions. If there's anyone else who wants to start with it, otherwise I can start with it. I have many questions, in fact. Hello?
Yes.
Sir, so I'll start with it. Sir, I have 2-3 questions. One was like the Naina Sahni Tandoor murder case itself. Probably in that case also she was murdered and then burnt. Now the body was charred beyond recognition, as you said itself was there. Now there are also cases where the bodies are exhumed. There are cases where the bodies are being burnt and then they are exhumed from the pyre as well. So how is it possible to actually discover that what was the mode, how the person was murdered, whether it was by burning, whether it was by stabbing, or whether it was by wound? How to do that? How do you proceed in that?
No, first of all, if the mortal remains are there, then we can't do anything. If only mortal remains are there. But if some part of the bones or if some part of the structure is there, we can identify through DNA. We can we try to extract the DNA from that part, and then we can send for analysis, and we can identify who the person is. So if there is only mortal remains are there, even then we can analyze in the toxicology lab to detect whether some poison was there to kill that person. So these kind of evidences, it depends upon case to case.
And sir, another question was that in matrimonial disputes, there are a lot of cases where this DNA testing issue comes. But now generally it is done only with the consent of the court. Is there any way out of doing it without the consent of the court, or are you doing it, or how to go about it?
No. First of all, if the cases are pending in the court of law, then we have to take that course only. Through courts, we can solve this paternity and maternity dispute, because the court can direct both the parents to give their sample for DNA examination, and the report can only become. But some private labs are also doing the DNA testing. But on another aspect, but for ascertaining that this DNA is of that person or not, the child is belong to them or not, we have to follow the courts.
Okay. Next, Padamji, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. You were raising a hand. Yes, Padamji.
Yes, yes. Like, sir, in sexual assault and rape cases, the swab of the victim is taken, and there must be a time limit for taking that swab. But the main question is, what happens from the DNA? We can conclude, I think, that the accused and the victim, accused forced him upon the victim. So DNA will tell that. But what in a case if the accused is the victim's father, like it is happening nowadays? A father rapes his daughter.
Yes,
and a sample is taken, sample is taken, sent to forensic lab for DNA analysis and all things. But obviously the DNA will match because she is his daughter. So how will we conclude that he committed the rape if there are no other indicators?
No, they first of all, the sign of struggles are also there, and if DNA is of the same is matching with that of them, then it is a confirmatory, because when we are doing the sampling of the person, even in most of the gang rape cases also, not only the individuals also, we can separate the DNA samples. So, but in that case, apart from if there is no other evidence is available, then the statement of the victim is very important in that case, and the DNA is can be extracted. It is not there can be from the father. The DNA cannot be accepted.
Jagjot, you can ask the question next. You can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hanji, Jagjot, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. I want to ask one question. How will we differentiate between suicide and strangulation?
Hello. Yeah, I understood the question. Now, it depends upon case, whether the suicide is by itself hanging, or itself or what kind of it is a homicidal. So if we find a body who is hanging in a room, so first of all, we have to see whether he was first killed or then hanged or not. So we have to see the ligature mark at the neck, and we have to see the neck position, whether it is broken or not. So, but when it was excision, then we have to see the print on the neck also. It is there. But if it is done with the help of some pillow and all, and after that it was hanged, we can easily identify.
Rajiv ji, you can ask the question
One
next.
more question. Jagjot. In post-mortem, sometimes the pieces of the organs are taken, and that is sent to the chemical examiner.
Yes.
And in that generally it comes organic phosphorus found.
Yeah.
So we try to prosecute people that it was found, but the defense is that it is naturally in every body organic phosphorus are found. So how will we differentiate? Is it the quantity it has to be mentioned by the chemical examiner?
Yes. So normally the quantity is to be determined in the lab, whether due to cyanide or phosphorus poisoning the person has died, because some phosphorus and some kind of poisonous substances are usually in our body itself, and the quantity is very small, because 2.53% is there. But when it is specifically given like a cyanide or a phosphorus poisoning, then we have to see the report of the lab. Though if the quantity is less than the normal value, then we can easily say that it is not a case of the poisoning.
Thank you.
Rajiv ji, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, one question which I had was, what is there a time period under which DNA can be retrieved from, say, cremated bodies?
Not such a time period is there, because if the bones are only available, then it can be extracted from the bone itself. So it depends upon time. If the body is fully mutilated, even then we try to find out the DNA from it. We try to extract the DNA at the last minute.
And it can be from any part of the body, or?
Yes, any living cell in the body. From any living cell in the body.
Okay.
So in the bone, we have the bone marrow.
But cremates from, if I'm saying that, for example, burnt bodies.
Yes.
Will not have. I believe
yes,
should not be having a living.
I have understood. If it is completely burned and we cannot extract DNA, if it is completely burned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sagar, you are next. You can ask the question. Sagar, are you there?
I think I joined late, so I think I missed out
Achha.
on a lot of things. I'll probably review it. And yeah,
you want to ask a question?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Please.
Achha, Karan, you want to ask a question?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Good evening, Dr. Chauhan. Thank you for a wonderful and enlightening session.
Thank you.
Question, sir, is though this question was asked by a fellow panelist also about strangulation in cases of suicide and ossification in cases of. I came across a matter in a custodial death case where I was appointed an amicus. Interestingly, the person got killed, allegedly committed suicide, but his feet were touching the ground, and he hanged himself with a grill of the lockup only, which was say around, if the grill, his height, if I can remember completely, is 5'9", and the grill was at 5'5" or 5'2" height. So that means the grill was lesser than the height of the deceased. Now, in that eventuality, the subdivisional magistrate at the first instance said that yes, it appears to be a custodial death, but subsequently in police inquiries they said that the death can happen in these cases also, relying on some Modi literature wherein say that in these circumstances if the person is drunk or he's in some inebriated condition and he keep lying for 4 to 5 hours continuously, then he can slowly get killed. So my first question is, in terms of instances of custodial deaths or custodial violences, the responsibility of the forensic expert is very high. Do they have a say in terms of a government agency to do it on their own, or their role comes only when the IO or the person who's handling the investigation briefs call them? Suppose in cases of custodial death, violences in cases of lockups, a forensic person would not hardly have an access properly which can have at an independent crime scene. What is the role of a forensic expert in these kind of instances?
No, first of all, in case of custodial deaths, we have to take permission from the honorable court. It is not necessary whether it is a government agency or it is a private agency. So when you are investigating the matter, you have to visit that place. So you have to get the proper permissions. Now, with regard to the custodial death, first of all, we have to see the post-mortem reports, what the doctor has reported. And if when you are saying that some poison or some alcohol kind of thing is there in condition he was there, so we have to see the report of the chemical examiner report also. That is, when the viscera was sent to that lab, we have to see. Then we have to couple the both reports and we have to find it out what was the reason. Now, in case of custodial death, whether he hanged himself or he was hanged by somebody else, it can also be known only after examination of the body, which was not possible for the forensic expert directly to examine the body, but only with the kind permission of the honorable court.
Got right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else wants to ask a question?
Yeah, Vishalji, hi. This is Akhilesh this side. Can I ask a question? Am I audible?
Akhilesh ji. Mr. Batra, I'll unmute you after this. After Akhilesh. Akhilesh, please go ahead.
Chauhan sir, my question is with respect to the cyber forensics. If it is if the case is of proving a digital evidence, in that case, can a private cyber forensic expert can be done, or the forensics can only be with only regard to the cyber forensic can only be proved with regard to the permission of the court only? Is there any specific judgment with regard to the proof of cyber forensics with regard to digital evidence?
No, even a private cyber expert can depose in the court of law, because he is a witness under Section 45 of the Indian Evidence Act, who is equipped with all the knowledge which an cyber expert has. Now, if he has the ability to analyze the cyber evidence, then he can visit the site and he can analyze the site, or even he can later on take the permission from the honorable court. There is no problem in that.
Right, sir. Right. Thank
Mr. Batra, you can ask the question.
Vikram, can you listen to me?
Yes, I am listening.
Okay, excellent performance. May God bless you. Love you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Can I ask?
Hanji sir, Jindal sir,
one
please.
Question?
Yes,
Hello?
Yes, sir. You can ask. You are audible.
Mr. Chauhan, can the age of the ink be determined on a document?
Yes, yes, it is a very interesting questions, and many courts ask us to examine this, but it is only possible if the standards are available. Now, if a document was written in 1971 and we have to examine from the ink itself, we can only determine the constituents of the ink, but we cannot say exactly in what year or it was written, because unless until we have the samples of the ink, then we can examine this. Otherwise, it is a very difficult for the examiner to tell the age.
So will the court not accept that evidence?
The court can accept the evidence because the chemical examination is required. For chemical examination, we have to extract the ink parts from the strokes from the writing, and then it can be analyzed with the another sample. So we have to take the permission from the honorable court. Otherwise, the document get destroyed when we extract the ink of the strokes.
Some of the high courts have taken the view that age of the ink cannot be determined.
No, it is mostly, it is a common thing. It cannot be determined exactly, but we can attempt to find out whether it is regarding, because it further depends upon the circumstantial evidence like the age of the paper, watermarks in it, and the the writing materials also.
And lastly, I will like to tell you that I am daily watching Crime Patrol on Sony TV.
Yeah, yes, sir.
In which most of the forensic part is being discussed,
yes,
and applied for in detection of the crime.
Yes.
So that is the most important and informative this serial on this part.
Yeah, I will tell you the reality, because my solved cases are shown on this Crime Patrol and this Aaj and all these serials are there. Mostly I have even in one of them, even I have become an actor made by them in some CID serials. So yes, my solved cases are presented, but it is very difficult because they have to increase their TRP. The evidence is just small, but they just linger on the series, and they made the series for one piece of evidence only. So
one piece of evidence, but the way of investigation is always interesting.
And yes, it is interesting. They have imagined the things. They have made the maps for how to proceed, how to make a fruitful and how to make an interesting case. So they are doing it.
So they are doing a lot of good service.
That's right.
Yes.
Any other questions from anyone? Can unmute himself or to ask question herself? Anyone?
Oh, thank you.
I think we're done with the questions. Then I'll ask one or two I still have. Anyone else is asking a question? I can stop. No one?
If Mr. Chauhan permits me, can I have a couple of more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Sabharwal is there. Yes, ma'am. Please, you can ask.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the voice identification. Like, can we do in a private sector, or it has to be sent to only the government can done?
No, madam, it can be done in the private sectors also, unless until he has equipment with them. Some labs have it. Yes, it is software is there, and a wide spectrographic machine has to be there, which is very costly. So the private persons cannot afford only for the voice analysis. So that is why they are sent to. Otherwise, some private labs have these kind of facility to check the voice samples.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Karan, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I'm bothering the panelists again and again. My question, sir, is that if a particular, this is with regard to the cyber crime, we come across a case where the email ID was logged in from two computers at the same time. And certain classified information was passed on by a particular person to another person. Now, it was a departmental proceedings. In those circumstances, can it also be identified that though the email ID was functional at the same time on was logged in on two computers parallelly, but the email was sent from A computer and not from B computer?
Yeah, it can be identified because it depends upon the server who will identify the source from which it was originated, and even the date and location is also told.
IP address would be different.
IP
Yes.
address.
IP
IP
address would be
address
different.
of a IP address of the computer or of the server?
Yes, the computer
Of the
from which
computer.
from there it will be different. Actually,
Right.
it would vary from every connection, from every internet connection. The IP address would differ. From your own home setting, from your computer, the IP address from Wi-Fi would be, from your net connection would be different. From your 4G would be different.
No, but if the server of both the computers are same.
No, it can be easily detected. Then it can be easily detected.
If the same connection is there, I don't know whether if the same connection
in that
to
case also, Vishal, if I may add, in that case also, for example, you have a Wi-Fi setup at home and you have your phone and your laptop connected. So your laptop IP address that is given by the Wi-Fi router is 198.162.0.1. And then it goes to 0.1, then it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, the number of devices that you connect. But at the same time, if you connect another, Wi-Fi network in the same area, and you connect to the different Wi-Fi, to the second Wi-Fi that you have in the same area, so your IP address, which is 192.168.0.1, maybe 192.168.0.5 there, because already 4 devices are connected.
Right.
So that way, every time you get onto a network, the IP address is given by the network in a different way, and yes, it can be identified as Mr. Chauhan was saying, Dr. Chauhan was saying. Sorry.
Right.
Thank you.
I think we are done with the questions. No more questions. No more. Padam, you can.
It's a privilege for me to present the vote of thanks today to Dr. Chauhan on behalf of all the friends. As we heard, Dr. Chauhan spoke on wide range of issues, including DNA analysis, forensic sciences, forensics, polygraphy, principles of handwriting and fingerprints, and everything. In detail, he explained things to us. And I'm very thankful to him for putting things in such simple language so that we can understand, because we lawyers and mostly we don't come across such great personalities. I was reading about him. He's a decorated soldier in forensic sciences. He has been awarded many times by the government of state and the India. And I would tell you an interesting tale. We all dream, before COVID-19, we all dreamt of going for a vacation to Las Vegas in USA. But Chauhan has been there in 2016 itself, but not vacation, but to present a paper, research paper in an university, All India Forensic Science. It's some congress, science congress, and where he presented a paper on the comparative study of left hand and right hand studies, how the handwritings differ and how we can conclude whether it's left-handed or right-handed. So Dr. Chauhan is a privileged guest on our panel, and I thanks him to come present before us and present all this his talk very beautifully. And I'm grateful to him, and I'm grateful to Vishal also, who helped us to listen to him, and all the guests who are friends who patiently heard him are also. I'm also thanking them also, and I think it was a good day for all of us, and it's a pleasant hearing.